we're just very proud that Jane has chosen to show her art here in New Britain. I think it's spectacular, and I think it will be really well received by our many, many visitors. That's tough to take from it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to see so many first-time visitors to the museum. I have been looking forward to this occasion and the preview and the unveiling of Jane's paintings for some time. It was actually about 5 or 6 years ago that my very close and good friends, Joan and Fred Bakeland. I see Fred. Joan, where are you? Joan? Oh, Joan. They started to tell me about Jane Bunker, and they said, oh, you would love her work, and she's so imaginative, and she's so successful, and we have bought a number of her paintings, and you've got to come and meet her. She's beautiful and talented and charming. And the more they talked, the more I thought, wow, this is for us. This is really absolutely great. But we didn't really rush into it, did we, Joan? I think it was 5 or 6 years. But then the more I learned about Jane, the more I realized that she was a natural for us. And I see in our audience Steve Miller and other members of the Acquisition and Loan Committee. And Jane very generously offered to give us one of these paintings after I asked her. And there was such it never hurts to ask. And there was universal praise for her work. Everyone loved the colors, they loved the focus, they loved the sentiment. They're realistic and they are romantic. They are in focus and out of focus. And there's a charm and an evocative nature to them. So I am really delighted that you all are here, and most of all, I am thrilled that Jane's work will be enjoyed for the next several months. I could not let this occasion go by without recognizing Mary Bunker's presence, because I know that from a very early age, she encouraged Jane's art education. And I think it is that formative influence in the lives of all of us that helped shape our later creativity and our career paths. I also want to welcome Mason and Cameron, and I want to welcome all of Jane's friends and relatives from near and far to celebrate such an extraordinarily talented artist, Jane Bunker.
Thank you so much, Douglas. Thank you for all those kind words. Thank you, John. And thank you for the opportunity to be here in this museum, which is kind of a dream of a lifetime. And thank you all for coming. Sort of a sea of my favorite people. Thank you. I want to begin today with a quote by one of my heroes, Paul Cézanne, whose paintings were some of my earliest inspirations. This particular quote has been like a guiding star for me as I painted this show. Everything vanishes, falls apart, doesn't it? Nature's always the same, but nothing in her that appears to us lasts. Our art must render the thrill of her permanence, along with her elements, the appearance of all her changes. It must give us the taste of her eternity. A noble goal, to be sure, and for me, the only way to set forth on such a journey is to paint what I love. The journey usually begins with a moment on my morning walk when I'm struck by the play of light on apparent external objects, which resonates for me as beauty. In that moment, there's a dissolving of any separation between me and the world. And what I experience as beauty is an intimacy akin to love. Nature's eternity is reflecting my own back to me. The following thoughts point to some of the ways my work has evolved over the years in an effort to directly transmit my deepest sense of love, wonder, and awe. The first question people usually ask about my paintings is, why do you paint so out of focus? And some people say it makes them dizzy. One explanation is that when I was very young, before anyone realized in the 3rd or 4th grade that I was severely myopic, the world was beautifully out of focus for me. That blurry world became my template for beauty. And now, despite contact lenses, I'm still drawn to that same lack of sharp edges, that same foggy, dreamy, misty kind of image in which there's a blurring of object into object and background into foreground. The softness creates a dreamlike image, suggesting the idea that what we think of as objective reality is only an ever-changing dream, veiling that eternity to which Cézanne alludes. In his book, Sudden Awakening, Eli Jackson Bear says, quote, "We know that humans see only a very small spectrum of light, flanked by an enormous electromagnetic spectrum of lower and higher radiation frequencies, including the radio, microwave, infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma rays that we cannot see. What if we could see farther out on the spectrum? We would see auras and energy streaming. We would see that there are no hard edges, that everything is energetically flowing into everything else. Would we then call that reality, the way we now call what we see reality? The way I have chosen to express what's in my heart has not just been influenced by the limitations of my eyes, but also by my experiments with different camera lenses and their ability to project things in varying degrees of focus. My paintings develop from photographs that I take, and the images in the paintings are often inspired by surprises that occur in the camera, such as the flashes of light as seen in the painting illumination, light that I would never have seen otherwise. One could imagine these mechanically created orbs to be like an expression of paranormal phenomena such as invisible spirits, auras, energy fields, or angels, or simply see them as circles of light, creating bright, luminous, graphic visual patterns. I never paint plein air as I'm too easily distracted by everything going on outside, and I would never get anything done. But more significantly, I prefer to document one moment of the play of light and then bring that image into the protective space of my studio to develop, something I would never be able to do without the camera. People also often ask me why I paint multiple panel paintings. Initially, one of the reasons was purely logistical. I wanted to paint bigger pictures, and I didn't have a big space to work in. I was working in an attic with a little portable easel when I painted Peaceful Morning, and each panel of the triptych was a manageable size. Maybe I've also been influenced by the view from what used to be our bed in Truro for most of my adult years, one of my most favorite views ever, which was of 3 big panels of glass framing the dunes in a beautiful real-life triptych. I'm also intrigued by the spaces between the panels and how they involve the viewer in bridging the gap. Instead of just one image, the multiple images are like the multiple frames of a moving picture, which the viewer combines into an uninterrupted image. And each panel, with its sharp boundaries clearly delineating it as an object from the space around it, contrasts with the way objects merge with the space around them in the paintings, accentuating an overall surface sensation of interconnectedness and oneness. Another question I often get is, how do you do that? When I was 10, I began studying with Helen Sawyer and Jerry Farnsworth at the Farnsworth School of Art on Cape Cod. Henke and Jerry were students of Charles Hawthorne, himself a student of William Merritt Chase, and they were like grandparents to me. After years during which I was only allowed to work with a palette knife in order to keep my colors from getting muddy, I was taught a scumbling technique, which I still use today. Scumbling is a sort of rapid, back and forth movement of my brush that embeds the paint into the grain of the canvas. I don't do much drawing. but instead start blocking out large areas of color. Gradually, forms begin to emerge as I build layer upon layer. I think the thin, multiple layers of paint help create a kind of luminosity, a feeling of light coming from within the painting that might not happen with a single application of thicker paint. I've never used an airbrush, nor do I ever project an image onto the canvas and draw from that. My first paintings were still lifes. Every summer during my teenage years, when my peers were out at the beach with their friends, I was sitting on a stool all day surrounded by mostly middle-aged art students, doing the only thing I really wanted to do. I was lucky enough to have a grandmother who regularly took me to the MFA in Boston, and I became passionate about Cézanne, Van Gogh, and Harnett, and their depictions of bowls of fruit, shoes, and violins. I also had very supportive parents, both of whom had a lot of artistic ability and loved the arts, and I received a lot of encouragement. I'm sure all the appreciation I received at such a young age strongly contributed to my ability to stay sitting on that stool. Eventually, I began to paint flowers and trees. The sensuous curves, vibrant color, fragility, and exquisite details of flowers, and the strong, linear, grounded, and rhythmic patterns of dark tree trunks, contrasting with the light surrounding them. Delicate flowers were enlarged and took on the power and authority of a landscape of trees, and massive trees became evanescent as they slipped into the fog. I was also intrigued by reflections. While the mind may believe that trees are more real than their reflections, they are both equally real or unreal, depending on how you think about it in my paintings. Both, like everything I paint, are merely reflections of my state of awareness. Curiously, I have not chosen to paint people, my subject matter in my other career as a psychologist. Some things I can't really explain, but it just feels like nature offers me a less complicated and more seemingly direct path to that sense of eternity Cézanne spoke about. In the beginning, I think painting was my way of trying to hold on to life, to stop the passage of time, to freeze frame a moment of perceived beauty that I could keep with me forever. More recently, it has evolved in the direction I've been describing, towards my attempt to capture the thrill of that which is permanent. And as I look back at my interim life as a psychologist, I can see the connection in these apparently disparate paths. In both cases, I've been trying to find and express some essential, eternal, awe-inspiring truth for myself, and then subsequently offer that as my gift to others. I was also drawn to paint in part because it felt like words paled in comparison to the visual image for me. I can remember a mystical feeling of wonder when I walked on the beach as a small child, and how words always felt inadequate to accurately express that feeling. Contrasts of light and dark, textures, colors, shapes, and lines, all had an indescribable power to both kindle inner feelings of reverence in me, as well as directly transmit them. And I never forgot how Caravaggio and Turner made me feel years after they had been moved to express their passion with paint. At its best, my painting is not only inspired by that ineffable sense of awe when the beauty of something I see resonates in me, but the process of painting itself is awe-inspiring. I am not like the stereotypical suffering, despairing artist. Not that I haven't suffered and despaired, but because I've never been able to paint from that painful place. Instead, for me, painting has always been like a meditation, an experience of being present with no story about past or future, with no sense of time, and usually with an overwhelming feeling of peace. I often listen to music, the Brahms Requiem, a Mozart flute concerto, Leonard Cohen, Rumi poetry put to music, kirtana, Ray Charles, and love songs by beloved friends. Sometimes I prefer silence. I rarely quit on a painting. If I've had a vision that I care enough about to begin a painting, I'm determined to stick with it until I feel satisfied, even though the painting may go through a challenging period. In the last 15 years, I believe my work has evolved in a way that more accurately reflects my deepening understanding of the interconnected aspect of all life. Form begins to collapse, as in the painting Bruce's Trees, and background becomes foreground. Bruce is an energy healer who cured me of chronic Lyme disease, and these trees were appearing and disappearing out of the fog on a recent visit to his office. This is the last painting I did for this show. In this painting, there is a movement toward the emptiness of pure awareness, out of which all form emanates and into which it dissolves. When I experience life from this perspective, everything seems like a miracle, and I'm filled with the awe that visual phenomena first triggered in me as a child, an awe that inspired me to paint. Over the years, I have loved Gerhard Richter's blurry photorealism, Degas' soft pastel landscapes, Steichen's photographs, and Seurat's charcoal drawings. I'm deeply drawn to Rothko's paintings as well. Clearly, I'm attracted to soft, dreamy, atmospheric images which have all influenced the way that I have chosen to express what's in my heart. I am hugely grateful to all those on whose shoulders I stand.